to the mic to give us a update on the current coronavirus situation.
Oh, but
For
I'm
less
not,
than 2 minutes. Don't
but
let it too
I'm
much.
not even
It
5
starts-
feet tall, so.
Oh, is that not counting?
Once we get
Thanks for inviting me. I just want to give you a brief update on COVID-19 and our response in the Public Health Department. We've been very, very busy. Although the first take-home message is we still have no cases, not even a presumptive one. So far, so good. It's probably just a function of luck more than anything else. But we are doing our best to make sure that the messages that we get out are about safety for individuals, especially those who are elderly and have comorbidity. That seems to be the most common folks who are getting affected by the virus. So we recommend, again, for everyone, good personal hygiene, social distancing, and for the elderly, you should probably, if you're really worried and you have a lot of comorbidity, stay home and wait things out and make special trips and those kind of things instead of going out and hanging out with everybody. So those are sort of the recommendations. I know they're having at Astor Place, for example, they're going to do some more lockdown at some of all the long-term care facilities. They're going to have limited visitation because those are really the folks that are most at risk. We're trying to protect them the most. Overall, there's, as of right now, there's 19 cases in the state. We have 67 pending tests for all the folks who are related to those who have been tested. And there's 232 people currently being monitored to see if they actually get the symptoms or not. See anything else? So on Wednesdays, we have a warm-up of the Emergency Operations Center, what we call collaboration calls. We have, I'm not even sure how many people are on that call right now. It's a bunch.
It's a bunch.
So,
I think it's at least 20.
there's at least, yeah, probably more than that.
Closer to 50.
Yeah, so we have at least 50 folks from all of the different partners of all the different sectors of Clatsop County call in to our conference line, and we give them a breakdown of everything. And then we give them an opportunity to ask questions from the managers of the cities, from the fire, from everywhere else, so we can make sure we're all on the same page. And then on Fridays, we actually have a special call for all the medical folks, the hospital staff, other providers, and we do the medical piece separately because some of that stuff is, they're not going to be interested in the medical side. We have, every day we do an update on our website to make sure we have all the latest details for people to see so they can go to our website and see what's going on. And we've stood up an ICS structure in public health so that we have constant vigilance and surveillance and monitoring of the situation.
question.
Absolutely.
I had the privilege of sitting in today because I was up in the county. Well, I was quiet. You probably didn't know I was there. It was interesting to me, the kinds of questions that people were asking. And one of the most interesting was Seaside Fire Chief Joey Daniels talking about the exposure to risk to first responders. And the answer, of course, is be proactive, screen the calls, be asking about conditions that indicate exposure to risk. Because these are volunteers. Because the question came, okay, what if our volunteer firefighters are exposed to this virus? Who's going to pay for their quarantine? And the answer is nobody knows, and it's an issue. So as usual, step back, ask the right questions during, I don't know if the 911 dispatchers were on the call.
They were.
They were, okay, because they were quiet too. But the idea is everywhere in every aspect of this prevention, if we, hi. Sorry. No, wherever you want to be. If we step back and do preventative stuff, I will say this is a case where virtue is its own reward, because those of us who've been part of the emergency civilian response stuff, we've got those masks that are really in short supply now. So all of us set the good example. I've been using my knuckle to push, well, because the idea is then it doesn't, because when I read the CDC website, keep my hands away from the openings in my head. So if we what else can commissioners do to support your good work besides attending, trying to encourage people to be proactive, and setting good examples ourselves? Is there anything else we can do?
I would encourage people to, if they have questions, then please contact Public Health. You guys could become, the mouthpiece for Public Health and give our messages out about personal hygiene, social distancing, protect yourself, protect your family. Try not to go to places, if you're feeling very insecure, then stay home. If you are sick, please, for the love of God, stay home. That's a really big take-home message. If you're working and you're sick, the odds are you're going to spread it to everybody in your office space. So you really want to try to, even if it's not a COVID-19, the influenza A is still here. It is peaking now. So if you have influenza A and you come to work, you're going to give it to everybody else. So there's good reasons to not go to work and spread the disease, whatever it is. So that's just one of the things we really want to make sure we do. And everyone can be ambassador for public health, and that's the kind of messages we want to have out.
I wanted to say that I've been on different, as we all have, on conference calls, but I like the way the agenda is. So people know that, 911, the fire departments, they all know they're going to have their turn. And it's so orderly, and you understand what's coming up, and I think that's fabulous. The other thing that I think that we can think ahead is, as seniors and people that are more vulnerable are asked to maybe avoid public, do we have neighbors that we could run an errand for, and that sort of thing. So I think that's something that the community can start thinking about too, is how do we take care of each other?
Right, because if the seniors do isolate themselves, and some of them are already isolated, we're going to have to start taking care of each other. But we want to make sure that if you are going to do that, those folks who are taking care of them can't then bring them things that they don't intend to bring them,
Right.
namely viruses.
Right.
So that's where that education and information piece is important, that if you are a worker of some kind and providing meals or whatever it is, make sure that you provide them in a safe way, that you're not spread. If you're sick, please don't do it. So find other ways to do it.
So there is so much information now that's coming out of Washington State from the governor and the national. It doesn't all jive. And people are getting more and more scared. Maybe with good reason, but now the World Health Organization it's a pandemic.
Right.
So what do we do to keep people calm?
Well, so, I don't know how many calls we got today, probably 100. We say the same messages over and over again. We do that on our social media, we do that on our websites, we do that in these meetings. That's the only way you can overcome all the bad information, is saying, that may not be correct, but this is what we've got from the CDC and OHA. Those two have always been in alignment, and I have no trouble with them. So at local public health, we stay in alignment with them. That way we know our messages are science-based, they're the most reliable, and they're relevant to what's going on. So that's what I would say, is try not to pay attention to social media. I know that a lot of people try to get their information there. Some of it's okay. I'm
talking about the news, like what you read in the...
Yeah, a lot of it's being blown out of proportion, so,
Okay, really?
absolutely.
A variation, and if it bleeds, it leads.
I think
it's
part
a-
of what's complicating it too right now is that, it's impacting the economy and just the freedom of movement. And so it is impacting people's lives. And so no matter what the actual risk is on the virus side, it's having a lot of other impacts. And so it's just really visible right now. And I think that's what a lot of the reaction is too, is just that a virus has created a lot of issues. The economy is actually, it's actually been impacted in a more severe way than even what we saw at the very beginning of the Great Recession. So I think that's what a lot of the fear is, because when you see that, it almost exacerbates what the actual medical reality is.
Right.
So.
Can I ask a question about the Oregon cases? I'm assuming they tend to cluster.
Well, actually, we've had them in separate counties. We've had little ones like in Washington County there's been, but other ones have been kind of onesie-twosies throughout the state, so. Yeah. So that's the trick, is trying to figure out is a community spread or what's the contact? And that's where the epidemiology is important. We follow up on all those contacts, figure out who they were in contact with, and then who they were in contact with, and just keep building the circle out until you try to find everyone who's been in contact so you can make sure that they're at least observed, had a medical screening by the, refer them to the primary care provider, those kind of things. So that's what public health's job is to do.
So have we found the origin for, I guess that's the wrong word.
You mean patient zero?
Linkages. Yeah, I mean, linkages, do we know where these disparate people?
Some of those details are protected by HIPAA. So we wouldn't actually know some of that until after the fact, because you can probably identify them from their details. So that's why you're not going to hear specific stuff about the patients, is that HIPAA protects them even in a pandemic. So you want to protect their interests. So we, even at our level, we get a filtered version of that, but, so we really can't, they wouldn't share that information.
I think in lines of Commissioner Thompson's comment about the first responders' vulnerability, we have a crackerjack team here, and I just want to encourage you to all take very good care of yourselves, because we need you.
Well, and if you have children, which you do, and nurses and doctors have children, and if the schools close,
Right. It's a burden, definitely, and it's tough for parents, so that's why the OHA is careful about mass gatherings, because that's the biggest concern, plus the cruise ship issue here. Those things are difficult, so it's a work in progress. Our county manager is doing a great job in leading that effort, having those conversations with the port and the cities, deciding what's best for the community, and making sure that health and safety is our first concern.
I know we were going to have a small, up at the Napa High School, to do a survey about the health clinic, and that was canceled for tomorrow. So I don't know if they canceled the awards banquet or not.
They talked to me about it. If we're going to lead by example, we should probably lead by example, because that was our meeting. And I asked, my question was, do we have folks who go there who are probably going to have chronic illnesses and chronic diseases? And there may be some elderly. Yes, they are on that committee. Well, then we need to follow our own policies and principles. So we decided it's best not to have that, because we don't want to expose them. So.
I've heard, okay, so what's the magic number for under gatherings, as far as, yeah,
There's no magic number. It's about, the question is I've been working with, for example, there's a big bridge tournament in Seaside apparently in a few weeks.
Oh, yeah.
That group is over 65, our majority are bridge players. And, just saying. And they also are going to be handling cards and passing them around to each other. So to me, that's the kind of mass gathering where you need to do the logic of, if even one person comes who's they're sick, who we didn't even know it, then the odds are that
Even
they
if
can
they didn't
spread it
shuffle the
around.
deck.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing, you got to work through the logic of, what's the model, who's the population, what's the route that it can be exposed, and what are the odds? So that one seemed to be a pretty easy one. Some of the other ones where there's a bunch of children involved, they don't seem to be being affected by the virus like the elderly are. So, that's another call. What do you do about those who come to watch the children do sports or whatever? Those are all calls that we work with the organizers on a case by case.
so basically this is all evolving, all the information,
Absolutely.
all the knowledge, because I know in the beginning I heard that, if you don't have symptoms, then you can't spread it. Now they're saying that's not true.
You could be asymptomatic, apparently.
No, I had read that, in China, that numbers are going down, in South Korea, the numbers are going down, which seems hopeful, but we don't know enough about this to know if it'll go back up, right?
Well, I think it's also about the number being tested, right? Because we don't know the extent of which we're in America yet, what the extent of where the virus actually is. We get the ones who are positive, who are symptomatic. How about all the folks who are asymptomatic or have mild or moderate symptoms? We don't even know if they have corona or not. So that's the issue. You got to compare apples to apples when you do those kind of numbers. You have to take from the whole population, test them all, how many had corona, how many didn't, how many got sick. That's how that works. If you just do little numbers, like these are all the folks that got tested because they were all symptomatic, those numbers are higher. So that's the thing, you have to wait to do the whole epidemiology before you can make those numbers. Otherwise, they're really not comparative.
Okay. Well, very good.
Well, and the cruise ships, on this call today, Mayor Bruce Jones urged the Port of Astoria to continue to follow the Port of Seattle's lead in inviting cruise ships to pass by. So that, well, if you're looking at uncontrolled populations, that would seem to me to be high risk in terms of the age of the population and the, visiting all the germ spots and coming around. Well, because the other part about Asia is they're much more able to lock down their population than we are in terms of more stringent quarantines, let's call it.
Freedoms. Yeah.
Well, I was trying to look for a
Suspect
tactful
people are
way,
gonna be
but
taking
yeah.
cruises.
I'm sorry, say it again, please.
I said, I would suspect people, not too many people are going to be taking cruises anytime soon, I would guess.
I would imagine the cruise industry is going to have some work to do. Yeah.
They're really cheap right now.
Yeah,
Well, I wouldn't be surprised at some point that you just don't see cruise ships, because I don't think that there's going to be as many people getting on board. So, I mean, one of the things that could happen as soon as we have an active case, I mean, one of the presumptions with the cruise ships is that there's nobody sick on board.
Yeah.
Right? So then they come to a community where there are sick people.
Yeah.
Then they get back on the ship.
Yeah.
Then you could be symptomatic after you get back on the ship, and then you're quarantined on the ship.
Which is
That
happening.
sounds like a nightmare to me.
Yeah.
And so, it'll be interesting to see how the cruise ship, but I would assume that at some point that the advice from the CDC and others would become more stringent about the cruise ships because we know those can be a problem, so.
Well, and people from Seaside were talking about the fact that, I mean, there are 3 long-term care facilities in Seaside, and having tours come down from the cruise ships, they're saying, well, we think that's probably not a good idea, because then you've got a possible source of contamination with a vulnerable population put together in the same place. So what I love about all this is that it makes us aware of the need to be clean, wash your hands, cover your mouth, all of the things that, I don't know about you, but didn't our grandparents tell us about all that stuff, and our parents? Well, here's a reminder. It really matters, and so it's.
fortunately, not everybody's doing that.
Oh, Lordy.
My
That's
nephew,
true.
my nephew works for the Trailblazers, and he was at the motor center, went into the bathroom, was washing his hands. He saw several men leave the bathroom without washing their hands.
I have noticed the same thing
Yeah.
In the men's bathroom?
in the men's room. It's men.
Women never do that.
It's just- A woman would never do that.
No, I watched that happen at the Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah, I mean,
I also hope that, there's been some talk on the national level of perhaps helping some of these workers that are at the low end of the pay scale to be somehow, supported. And I hope that that's something that will come to pass. We, our caregivers on all different levels in our society are generally the lowest paid, some of the lowest paid workers. And we absolutely depend on them. So I hope that in this time of need that we will help them.
Well, and it's reasonable to ask people to stay home, but some of the most vulnerable don't have the buffer of sick leave, paid sick leave. And so to ask them to take a double hit, to be
Right.
ill and to lose pay,
Yeah.
Has there been any discussion in any of these coordinator sessions about people who live in isolation and how we could maybe get food to them from our food banks? Or is there anybody who's setting up any kind of a system?
That hasn't been a conversation of the cooperators group yet. I think that, again, this is very evolving as we go, and there are new issues that are being raised every week. And so we're kind of taking those as we come. But there are different agencies that are talking about that. The city is, the Congregate Mills, sites. And so there are conversations, but a lot of those are happening outside of the county. itself, but there are conversations.
I have a question, because, I was gone, so I missed the discussion about that property up on Red Bluff Road, which, this seems to me like a public health issue. And if we're looking at vulnerable populations and how do we help people who are vulnerable, what if they don't want help, but we see the risk to themselves and others? Because, the reason we have sanitation laws is because it's a public health issue. And if they're not being observed, how do we effectively carrot and stick, educate, enforce when needed, but there is a public health issue, because I don't think we're staffed right now to do that. I don't know that we're equipped with the proper ordinances, but if we have a basket to hold on to concepts, I'd really like us to think about that, about how do we support at-risk people with a combination of education, financial, material, emotional support, and regulation when it comes down to it.
Right.
Well, I look
Oh,
forward to your being, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, we're just, I want to,
Again, we're out of time.
yeah. So,
Thank you, Mark.
Thank
Anything
you.
else?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
I
Appreciate
did-
your work.
I did forward you the message from the AO.
I
The
know.
AOC has those commissioners' calls. I just want to make sure that everyone got that invite.
So is that going to be a different kind of
Of course.
topic than what we were just talking about
I'm sure it
today?
is, but it's the same people. so.
All right, very good.
It just aimed at us.
Okay, cool. So we had, if it's okay with you all, I would like to have this last discussion to be the board communication, because that gives us 5 minutes to discuss the agenda if we need the whole 5 minutes. But I'd like to give our planning team as much time as we can for all the hard work that they're doing so they can present. Does anybody have any comments about the agenda? No? Okay. All right, so Gail, if you're ready, we can have you come on up.
I do have one thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Yeah.
no, go ahead, but could we also have a bottle of sanitizer on the dais too?
If they're to be found. Okay, thank you, Gail.
Good evening, Commissioners. Gail Hendrickson, Community Development Director. I'm here tonight to give you an update about the comprehensive plan and where we're at and where we're going. We started the process back in February of 2019 by sending out a call for applications for the citizen advisory committees. And I don't want to ruin the surprise, so let me stick to my format here. So our...
Are there treats involved?
A surprise, I know.
So really, our comp plan, the basis of it is citizen involvement. How can we get citizen involvement? How can we get input? What are the ways to reach out to the community and the stakeholders? So to that end, right now we have 6 citizen advisory committees. There's one in each of the planning areas, and then we have one that is a countywide committee that includes people from incorporated areas as well as liaisons from the different planning areas themselves. So we have 6 committees. We have a total of 32 committee members. Since June of 2019 through December of 2019, they held a total of 30 community citizen advisory committee meetings. They put in over 560 volunteer hours, and our attendance at the different meetings and open houses has been weak. I will say that. We've had 89 unique attendees. We have a lot of people who come repeatedly, but unique people who have shown up, we're at 89 right now. So we've also had 5 public open houses when we started the comp plan process. Those were held in April and May of last year and into June. We have done radio ads, we've done newspaper ads, we run event announcements on Coast Community Radio. We have tried putting up posters in local businesses, display ads in the papers, legal notices. We worked with a resident out in LC Jewell to do a direct mailing to people that the school had contact information for, so we did try that as well. We're on Facebook and we're on the county website. So we're trying to reach out in as many different ways as we can. And as I get further into my presentation, then I'll talk some more about some of the changes and different outreach methods we're going to try in the upcoming year. So a lot of what we do is we try to provide education to the committee members. So they've got, I hate to use science-based information, but they've got information from state agencies that has been, vetted and researched and put out there, and it's free, which is wonderful, so we like to use it. We've been bringing in subject matter experts to hold different workshops as we work our way through the goals. We are going to be starting Goal 5, which is a very big goal, and it covers a lot of topics. So we have had 2 presentations so far, one coming up on Friday on Goal 5. We have a new one planned for April 3rd as well, which is going to be dealing with watersheds and open spaces and scenic spaces. So we'll be doing that. We had a forest lands conversation about Goal 4. This was back in November prior to the momentous or monumental memorial, whatever it was, the agreement, the memorandum of understanding that was signed. And of course, we all know that kind of fell apart when the session fell apart as well. So, and now we've got the climate change executive order. So it's constantly changing and shifting and evolving, and we don't know how all of this at the state level is going to play out and affect us. So we just keep monitoring it, keep our committee members apprised of what's happening, and just adapt as we go along. Greenwood Resources also volunteered and put on a forestry tour for the committee members, and I think we had about 17 or 20 people on that one, and all total at the different workshops, we've had over 170 attendees. So in terms of our community outreach, when we started the process, we sent out letters to different stakeholders and organizations throughout the county. We sent out over 120 letters. We got some responses, some we did not get any responses, but what we're trying to do is make stakeholders aware, A, that we're in the process, that they should be involved, to try and find ways to get them involved, whether it's giving a presentation or just coming to the meetings or offering to, give a presentation at a workshop. So we want everybody to be involved. We've also been trying to get out into the community. Again, this is probably a weak part on our, a weakness on our part. We did attend the Place Matters conference, which was held last June at the fairgrounds. Staff, Julia and Ian, went down to the Arts Summit in November and participated in that in the vendor area. And we have not identified any new outreach of this type, doing booths at a public event right now for 2020, so that's something that we do still need to focus on.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
At the county fair, I think would be a wonderful place for us to have a booth. And probably at some of the other, might even, I don't know, but I think looking at things that happen at the fairgrounds in general are, I think, a good idea, because we get a diverse groups of people coming for different kinds of events.
Yeah.
That's true, but it's also true that it's a long period of time to have volunteers man the tables. So that's something to consider too. Oh, but
Yeah,
because I've been involved with events that have done that, and it's like it's a great place to connect with people. I'm just saying, it does require, of course, it does require
A presence.
lot of manpower.
Yeah.
And I have a suggestion too, because I really appreciate the work that you've done, and I think the people that you've reached well, because there are a lot of people coming back. My concern is that we see it as a stakeholder thing and not as a community participation thing, because I think that leads to different actions. What I see as missing in this and many other activities is people who work for a living. So if you've got business owners, they often can't get away because they're daytime meetings for the most part. And so that cuts out a whole lot of people. And as Commissioner Sullivan points out, it's labor intensive. By golly, it is. There's no doubt about that. but who gets invited to come to the table and whose concerns are heard? Now, it could be that some people, even if you invited them, wouldn't have time or energy to come. If you've got somebody who's working 2 or 3 jobs and they've got little kids, maybe they're not going to be there. Maybe if you went to Chamber of Commerce meetings, there are various chambers of commerce, at least you get some business input. And then maybe business owners, small business owners would be talking about the needs of the people who work for them. But the concern I have is how do we get at the people that we don't see and we don't hear from, because we're impacting everybody. It's a huge thing you're taking on. I have such admiration for you. And not everybody's going to come to the table, but everybody needs to be heard, which is really a dilemma.
I think it seems, all the meetings that I've been involved with, that seems to be absolutely a very important point that the whole department and the people and the volunteers have been aware of and doing all they can to reach out to everyone. I think when you say stakeholders, you're just using that term, it's community, it's all community.
No, I really have a different point of view from
I
that,
understand.
respectfully, because there are people for whom this is a cause, and they have time and adequate financial support to consider it a cause and to show up.
I understand your point, Commissioner Thompson, but
They're not-
let's just move this along. Please.
Okay. All right, so some of the other outreach that has occurred, we had presentations from different organizations, including the Lower Columbia Hispanic Council, the Clatsop Community Action spoke at the very beginning of the process. On our workshop on Friday, we've got the Lower Columbia Preservation Society and the Clatsop County Historical Society coming to talk about historic resources. We, as staff, have also tried to reach out and go to other places as well, and Ian gave a couple of presentations, one down at the Coastal Planners meeting back in, I think it was October of 2019, and he also addressed the Warrenton Planning Commission to bring them in and make sure that they're aware of it. And then I've also worked with the Clatsop County Arts Council as well to make sure that they're involved in the process. As we go through this in the upcoming year, we'll also be working with the Recreational Lands Advisory Board as well and meeting with the Fair Board as well. So trying to bring in different groups.
Sorry. How's it going with small farmers? Are they able to come?
Interestingly, our northeast planning area, the committee itself has 1, 2, I think 3 small farmers, actual small farmers as the committee members.
Good.
So they've been very active and thorough and
Great.
engaged. Okay, so to kind of recap here, this is what we did in fiscal year 1920. We got the groups through goals 1 through 4, and we've completed the draft rewrites. We're internally reviewing them now, and then we're sending them to Department of Land Conservation and Development for input as well. And what the state's looking for and wants to help us with is to make sure that the policies we put into the comp plan actually have some teeth, so that at some point, if we wanted to rely on them, we've got a good solid foundation. So,
I have a question.
yeah.
As far as climate change, I know you'll hear from the state to know what is required as far as what language would have to be. Can the counties have, how much leeway is there for the counties?
I think it depends on what you want to insert into the comp plan. If it's something that addresses, say, Forest Practices Act, and is working to try and change that, we are limited in how we can address that. We can create policies that say we encourage, we want to work with, we strongly advise, but we can't put in policies without possibly going to a legal pathway that say we will do more or require more than what certain state laws will require.
I know that, this would be a small amount, but I know that there's a lot of current conversation now about carbon soil sequestration, which would be of benefit and I would think of interest to the small farms. Just wonder about, you talk to them or these people who are small farmers about this?
So we did not specifically hold a meeting that targeted just small farmers. We discussed a lot of different climate change actions and possible mitigation efforts in the various citizen advisory committees around the county. I know sequestration was talked about, and I don't know, Julia, if you have any specific, Julia Decker is our planning manager, and did you have any specific recommendations that came into Goal 4? She's our Goal 4 expert, so, yes.
Just, everybody is, it's a very hot topic. The committees have all been discussing it. There are a number of different points of view. There are different agendas for some of the different folks who are attending. Some of them are committee members, some of them are members of the public. This topic is ongoing, I guess is what I would say. Trying to remember if we have any specifics. There were a few specifics where people were looking at goals that would encourage sequestration. I don't remember the exact language right at the moment, but it's a great concern, one way or the other, for pretty much everybody on all of the committees and a number of the people attending.
Okay. So in the upcoming year, which really we've focused on fiscal year 2021, because this is how I set up the budget and the budget requests that you'll see in the next few months, is we would like to get through goals 5 through 12 in the next 12 months, which we're ambitious. I think goal 5 is big, and goal 5 will take several months to get through. Goal 6 itself is pretty straightforward, and I think a couple of the later ones, 11 and 12, are pretty straightforward. Where we'll spend some time, obviously, will be Goal 5, and which is the open space, watershed protection, wildlife habitat, and Goal 10 is another big one, that's the housing goal, and Goal 7, which deals with natural hazard mitigation. So those will probably be the ones where we'll be spending a lot of time focusing on. Then in the following fiscal year, we would hope to complete the process by working through goals 13 through 18 and then completing the community plans. Now, one thing that we found is that because we do encourage community involvement and public participation, that does add time to the process. And that when you have a lot of public participation, you don't cover as much ground as you possibly could if it was a more structured meeting where you limited participation. So that may change how the schedule plays out over the next fiscal year, but this is what we have as our goal internally as staff. We have some upcoming open houses, and I've provided you all with a list of open house and meeting dates from April through June, and there's a stack on the table as well. So we start the process again in April, with the first meeting being on April 2nd. We have scheduled the 5 open houses again to get public input on the staff rewrites for goals 1 through 4. And those are scheduled 2 in April, 2 in May, and 1 in June. So we've staggered them out. They're at various times. We've tried to think of times where we can maybe gather the most, as you put it, community members as much as we can for the open houses.
May I ask
Yes.
the coronavirus, if it continues to be a concern months from now, that may affect the schedule?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, we did not cancel our workshop for Friday, and I did check with the presenters to see, we have 1 coming from the state and then 2 locally, to see if they had any concerns or restrictions, and they were all amenable to coming. So, and as we're not in any type of restriction, and I didn't hear the whole presentation, so maybe we are, but.
Not yet.
Okay. So, yeah. So
We're a large enough room, people can.
Yeah, and I think that you'll see people who don't show up, but we do try to live stream and we do record them. We do sometimes have problems with the audio due to user error, but we do try our best to make sure that people do have access to it one way or the other. So over the course of the past 6 months, we learned a lot as staff about what works in this process, what doesn't, and so we're going to be doing some tweaks and adjustments as we move forward. One of them being to try and cut down on the background material that we are providing. So I know that you love your binders, but your binders are not going to fill up as quickly this year. So what we're going to try to do as staff is, instead of providing the primary materials to the committee members themselves, to do more to summarize those materials. And if you remember in your package, you always get a 3 or 4 or 5 page background report on each goal. We'll beef those up a bit and put more information in, but eliminate all the primary source materials. We'll give you links to it in case you're really curious and want to go. So that will help. It'll also do a lot in terms of paper reduction. One thing that we heard from the Clatsop Plains Advisory Committee is that they wanted to have a representative from the Chinook Indian Nation on their committee. So we did, as staff, reach out to the nation, and we did have a recommendation made to us that we would like to bring to the board on March 25th at your meeting for an appointment. They would like to appoint a primary representative and then an alternate in case the primary is not available. And then Commissioner Quila also pointed out that we should probably consider having someone from Camp Rylea as well on the Clatsop Plains Advisory Committee, because they are smack in the middle of Clatsop Plains. So I reached out to Tim Farmer, and he's also provided a recommendation that we'll be bringing to you on March 25th as well. So. And then the other thing that we would like to do, and we'll be asking for additional funding in the budget for this out of the Special Projects Fund, is to do more direct mailings to property owners. And so we're going to be doing things like this on a quarterly basis that lists all the upcoming meeting days for the entire quarter, where the meetings are held, and if there's any open houses planned or events that we know of at the time, then we'll include that on there. But we're also going to be running a quarter-page ad in the Daily Historian in the next couple of weeks that will include all these dates as well. So we're trying to do more based on the feedback that we got.
How about the Seaside Signal and the Cannon Beach Gazette too? Because and the school newsletters, because the Jewel newsletter, the magazine, the J, is very widely read. I don't know about Napa. Kathleen, do you know if Napa School has anything that goes out to parents?
No, I don't know what they do.
All I'm thinking is, if we're really looking at reaching widely, and we're talking about what happens to the children and the grandchildren, going through school newsletters, and they're always hungry for revenue and the rates are great.
Okay, I've noted that. Yes.
Can I, one of the things I think that the comp plan gives us an opportunity for is an awful lot of public information and education. Have you all thought about anything that we could directly link into the schools? Especially since we are doing, since often our planning areas are very consistent with school districts. Something that we could, I don't know, I mean, I guess I'm always looking for a reason to hook up with the schools, and especially in rural parts of the county where school districts provide a nexus of information for people that's really important. Is that something that you could explore, or maybe ask LCDC? Who else who has ever done a comp plan has done something creative with schools? I think it would really be, I think it'd be a huge plus to be able to do that.
We did explore October's Community Planning Month, and so one of our planners did look into the option of doing something with, we were, I think, looking at Lewis and Clark School. Just because of short staff time, we just never followed through on it and completed it. I think it would be wonderful if one of the board members would like to volunteer to help and become the liaison with that.
I think all of us should.
Okay.
I mean, you know, we have advisory groups in every one of our districts, and I would certainly be more than happy to do something. And that actually, for me, that goes beyond just what we're talking about right now. I am more than happy to do, to go to a local chamber or to or any of our, I mean, we have a lot of independent groups that especially business people come to. I would be more than happy to carry some of that load, and I'll bet other commissioners would too.
Okay.
And
Well,
the
that's wonderful.
cross-fertilization, when I went to that STEM opening, the, what I
Yeah.
call it the super garage.
Right.
So here's Neil Bond from Forestry, the fire guy for the Department of Forestry. He's on your school board. It's like, I forgot. But that cross-fertilization of those community bonds as well, because I bet he'd like to be involved, but he's busy working or doing school boards and not thinking about that. So however we can, conduits for the
Right.
education you're talking about, the communication you're talking
And
about.
actually, that's a subject that I would love to put into our board plan.
Oh, good.
Because I think there are just wonderful opportunities to be more effective educators and to support our school districts in doing that.
And kudos to you for helping us develop specific suggestions because of the work you're doing, you and your staff.
Good, thank you. We appreciate the input.
Did you, I'm sorry. we've got-
I am at the end. I'm ready for questions.
All right, very good.
Would it be possible, or should we ask the Chinook tribe to be any other places in the county besides Clatsop Plains?
You've got tribes.
Yeah, sure.
No, I'm thinking, Roland Anderson, the folks he's connected with, right? Is that part of what you're thinking about? They go all the way to
That's
Clatsop
true.
Plains?
Well, yeah, Diane Collier. She's very involved.
And so there must be a sort of conscious tribal presence here. There must be along the road, some interest.
The person I most often contact with is Don. I think he's come to many of these.
He has.
I've been to a lot of these here, so that's my contacts.
Okay. And he's the one that they've recommended as the alternate, and then Devina being as the primary.
Because Don told a story at the first Clatsop Plains meeting that brought the room to tears almost. And they have a lot of this. That's, I think,
If I get some time, it'd be nice to think about some of this in
Yeah,
terms of
please.
Curriculum for education. I think there's a lot of intersections with science classes. Not at this time.
That's where the teacher comes in.
As I go back to my former career, hopefully.
Well, Tongue Point, are there, so we're thinking about the tribes because they're a nation, even if they don't have legal status. But then the federal folk are impacted, so Camp Lee, but does Tongue Point or does the community college have a specific role? I don't know if we link with them because they're such a vital part of our community. I mean, you're really helping us think this through. That's why we want to do community involvement.
that's a great thought. That's a great thought.
Okay, does anybody else have any other comments? We get a little bit of a break before the main meeting.
Okay,
thank you,
thank you for your time and your input.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
excellent presentation.
Thank you, Gail.
Wonderful.
The Board of Commissioners as the governing body of Clatsop County and all county service districts for which this body so acts, and the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session. Let's have the flag salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, may we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Nebeker? Here. Commissioner Webb? Here. Commissioner Krula?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Here. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair, I so move that we approve.
Pardon?
I so move that we approve the agenda.
Okay, any seconds?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, we just do that, we just do it okay and then go forward, right? We don't do it, okay. The agenda is approved. Okay, that's what I was.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was stumbling in. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the agenda is so approved, so it is, yes, it's approved. It's right in there. Okay, the business, the business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 3-minute presentation on any item on the agenda except public hearings or any topic of county concern. That is not on the agenda. The business from the public will be limited to 30 minutes.
30? 3 minutes, please.
No, the public period, public
Oh,
period.
whole period, okay,
Will be
sorry.
limited to 30 minutes.
Oh.
To ensure that everyone has a chance to comment, I would ask speakers to observe a 3-minute limit. If you agree with the previous speaker or speakers, you may simply indicate your name and address, and then you support those comments and support. In addition, the board also accepts written testimony. But I think we're going to be able to handle it tonight. We might even have a little leeway. So, first one up, Mr. Roger Dorban, please.
Sorry, I thought you were saying each person got 30 minutes. I
Oh.
was thinking, oh, please, thank you.
I'm Roger Dorban, resident of the county, 416 Sixth Street.
Mr. Dorban, let's get the microphone right before you
Maybe you
start.
push the other one away.
Push this one right and push this one further back. How's that? How's that?
If our
Law
sheriff is
enforcement
going
to the
to,
rescue.
thank you, man. Sure. Yeah, that's better. Thank you, Mr. Dorban.
Today, Governor Brown bravely made an executive order outlining in detail state-level steps to combat the effects of climate change. From her opening remarks, she made this statement. I've heard loud and clear from our young people in Oregon, climate change is crucial and urgent. If we adults don't take action right away, it is the next generation that will pay the price. We owe it to them to do our part to ensure that the globe they inherit has a better trajectory than the one it's on today. Immediate and comprehensive efforts are needed to tackle the scourge that is devastating the Oregon we know and love, and a smart approach can both protect the environment and grow the economy. So tonight I'm here as the co-leader of the Forest Visions Group, an activist group, and also representing other committed activists from the community and concerned citizens. And we are asking, number one, that the county immediately draft a letter to support the governor for taking leadership in getting Oregon moving to help the worldwide effort to combat climate change. Number two, we're asking that the commission also begin drafting a resolution acknowledging that climate change is real and stating how the counties, that the county will commit to begin looking for ways to do our part in help mitigating it. And I'm speaking not just in terms of preparedness for the negative impact of climate change, but by identifying ways to help curb its advance through measures as simple as looking for areas where additional trees can be planted, or utilizing greener vehicles to replace worn out diesel vehicles, basically getting on board with as many aspects of the Green New Deal as we can see applicable in our county. We truly don't have time to waste on this effort. We currently have 2 candidates running for positions on the commission whose main platform seems to be that they oppose cap and trade. So it concerns me that with their election, the balance on the board could, on the commission, could tip away from supporting the governor. That's why I urge you to deal with this issue as soon as possible. By supporting the governor's executive action and passing the local resolution, the commission can demonstrate that Clatsop County doesn't want to hide from the future, but rather will look it straight in the eye. And we trust that our informed local leaders will stand strong with the governor of the state at this very opportune moment to start getting things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorban.
Right on the money. Perfect.
Mr. Farrar?
Thank you for giving me a couple of minutes here to speak to you tonight. I don't have anything prepared and won't be quite as eloquent as the last speaker, but I'm fortunate in serving on 2 boards of directors that are conservation organizations, the Clatsop County Soil and Water Conservation District board member, and a board member on the North Coast Watershed Association. And both those organizations do restoration work throughout the county, primarily in the riparian zones, trying to improve stream habitat for fish, but wildlife in general. Also, our work helps prevent erosion of valuable farmland and forest land, and keeps sediment out of our streams, and makes water quality easier to make fit for drinking water for local populations. So our work is very important, but really the reason I came to talk to this board tonight is that the county does have a role to play in working with these 2 organizations, and they have so done by having a board member attend some of our meetings. And this morning, Clatsop Soil and Water met for their monthly meeting, and Pam Webb was there and had great input and really helps our organization to make a connection with the county directly. And also with the North Coast Watershed Association, I want to say that our executive director, Jane Harris, and I met with the county roads department with Ted McLean and his whole staff, and they opened up a good conversation there about projects that we could carry on with the county. So I just wanted to kind of thank the county for taking caring enough about conservation to interact with our organizations, because both organizations are very small, don't have big budgets, they barely scrape by. So anything we can do to interact with larger entities and keep us afloat is great. And I'm just kind of rambling on here, so I'll leave it at that, but I appreciate the county's participation in these organizations, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Farrar. And I appreciate both you gentlemen coming in this evening. Appreciate your input. Thank you. So we'll now move on to the consent calendar.
Madam Chair, move adoption of the consent calendar.
Second?
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the consent calendar is approved unanimously. And let's move on to the Commissioner's liaison reports. Commissioner Thompson, would you like to start?
Sure. I missed the last meeting. I went to Florida. I did not go to Disneyland. I went to the Kennedy Space Center and learned about a lot of stuff there. I went to, just as a guest, but I also participated in the Association of Governmental Risk Insurance Professionals and came back with a lot of good information about governance and succession planning and how to do things well at an organizational level and at a personal level. So I shared some of that information with the county manager and with others. I'm happy to share it broadly if anybody's interested. I mean, it's the kind of thing that makes me happy to talk about. After that, I've gone to the Oregon Housing Stability Council again. I'm still working to build those relationships and the collaboration capacity to help bring more housing to rural Oregon. Trying to move forward in the area particularly of community development corporations and community land trusts to keep housing affordable in perpetuity. It's a longer term, bigger picture, trying to work it not only for Clatsop County, but for the AOC District 7 region. Then Monday went to AOC's regular Monday, second Monday meeting. The new executive director is there, Gina Nickel. It's the first time that a woman has headed that organization, and it's going to be very interesting. I think there'll be a different way of proceeding. Again, looking to make common cause with our colleagues to find ways that we can solve our mutual problems, resilience, housing, ecologically sustainable economic development, all of that. I got an invitation to Eric Paulson's retirement party, and that's a really big deal. This is somebody who's been in our community, whose family has been in our community, so I don't know how broadly the invitation goes out, but I just wanted to take a minute and thank him from the dais for his contribution as an individual and as a company to our community, and wish him well in whatever he does. Tomorrow is COLPAC and Northwest Act. That's community economic development again, and it's transportation issues. I'm still working on childcare. Commissioner Sullivan and I were working to figure out how to keep each other in the loop. As an organization, I think we could do better in sharing information and developing momentum to achieve results in a variety of areas. So I'm looking forward as we continue with our strategic planning to focus on how we contribute to each other and go forward as a board, as a staff, to serve the community and the taxpayers. I'm going to this conference, the Western Governors Conference, Reimagining the Rural West, because they've got offerings on housing and water and wildfires. Now, if they had economic development too, they're talking about agriculture. Well, I'm not so interested in agriculture. Maybe you should go to that one. But I've got the information here, the agenda, in case anybody else is still interested in attending that. The Mass Timber Conference is the week after that, so I'm going to miss our next meeting because I'll be there trying to work Mass Timber to see if we can't get some proliferation of manufacturing capacity to build modular housing using mass timber techniques all over rural Oregon. So that's what I'm up to. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Who would like to go next? Mark?
I just have one thing real quick. Thank you, Chair Sullivan. At the Fair Board meeting, they confirmed that Josh Turner will be the headliner for the Fair concert on Thursday, July 30th, 2020. So he's a popular country artist, and I know there are a lot of people who are excited that they were able to sign him to come to the Fair this year. So that's the main.
Who gets to talk to these big stars to try to get them to come?
That's really John Lewis and the staff out there, and they work with the board themselves, and they have a list of all of these artists to select from and prices along with them, and go through that list. And this was one that they were really excited about, that it was gonna all work out. He was gonna be in the area, and it's gonna come together for him to perform.
Oh, very
Cool.
good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Webb?
Yeah, I have a couple of meetings to report about. One of them is that the Northwest
Northwest Oregon Housing Authority, which is the housing authority for Columbia County and Tillamook County and Clatsop County. And I finally have a commitment from them to transfer all properties that are in Clatsop County that are not yet under the ownership of the Tri-County Housing Authority, so that we can dissolve the county, the Clatsop County. I have a commitment to do that before the end of this fiscal year, and staff has promised me that they're working to make that happen. Also, for those who didn't, I've reported in the past that one of the things that had been particularly detrimental to the operation of the Housing Authority in the past year, I think
We're going to have a harp music break.
well, I think Commissioner Nebaker maybe has asked some of her son's friends to come and entertain us.
My son just calling me, I'm so sorry. It is, really.
If they're on our emergency contact list, they override Do Not Disturb. I found that out at a meeting, so I understand.
I thought, I always turn it off, but I didn't.
Okay, so one of the big things that has been really getting in the way of the effective administration of our housing authority has been a pending lawsuit from an employee who was actually the deputy director, who filed, she was fired, I felt, for great due cause, and it came to trial a couple of weeks ago, and she lost her case on all counts. So the Housing Authority comes away very cleanly from this very ugly situation. And it has lifted a huge weight off the shoulders of the Housing Authority staff, who I think has just performed admirably, being short-staffed and all kinds of other issues. So this is a huge thing off our shoulder. And we met, actually, in St. Helens, where one of those quasi-community development, it's not really a community development organization, but anyway, a nonprofit property developer is about to build a really pretty spectacular over 100 units of affordable housing in St. Helens. And we try to meet at our properties in different counties. So we were at one of the Gable Park ones, which is a very, very, very nice facility. So we feel like it's a new day for the Housing Authority. So the other quickly, she said, day before yesterday, the Oregon Coast Visitors Association, which is an offshoot of Travel Oregon, which is the state's tourism bureau, held a very wonderful meeting in Gerhardt and invited the local stakeholders in the tourism industry to come and hear about what started off being called the Tourism Studio, which was a process for organizing tourism on the coast. And we have been meeting, and in a month or so, on the agenda will be two of the representatives in this process who will give you all a presentation about all this work that I've been talking about. So I'm really excited about that. And this was a great meeting. It included a great many stakeholders, restaurant owners, hotel owners, artists, a wonderful selection of artists. And it was really nice to get their feedback from the work that we've been doing. So I feel that, Travel Oregon has more money than anybody else in this state. And they've been spending it very well. I've appreciated all the free lunches I get from them. But there is no such thing as a free lunch, because I also spend a whole lot of hours with them. But so I look forward to you all finally hearing what we've been working on for 2 years, which has been cool. I'm sorry, do you have a date for that? For the presentation? I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I can't remember when it is.
I don't
It's in
recall
April.
off of our schedule. It's the first meeting in April, so
Oh, okay.
thank you, Monica.
Commissioner Nebeker?
Okay. It's funny that the meeting was in Gearhart because the Gearhart comp plan is anti-tourist. Well, it's kind of ironic. I love Gearhart. I live there and I love it, but it's just, there's irony there. And before I give my report, I wanted to, I remembered, I emailed Denise Loffman of Crest about Big Creek.
Right.
So I haven't heard back yet, but I just wanted you to know that I did. Okay. Okay, so the Health and Human Services Advisory Council, I attended that meeting, and Amy Baker gave a similar presentation to the Advisory Council as she gave to us. But I think some of these things are worth repeating, and there may be some in the audience that would like to hear some of this. As we know, behavioral health issues are increasing, and the question is, what do we do about it? 1 in 5 people experience mental illness, and 1 in 25 serious mental illness. And while the incidence is high, the funding is very low. Substance abuse is not being adequately funded, and the vast majority of people who need help are not receiving it. Most people do not even realize they have a problem. Also, the paperwork is onerous, and the red tape and all of that. Yeah, they have to go through a great deal of intake in Oregon. Recovery Allies, the RAHs, are showing dramatic positive influence and help. I'm not sure that Amy Baker talked about this, but New Mexico has a great first model with little intake and first 4 sessions as a given. So the barrier is the intake. And a lot of people won't come back, or they just won't even go through it. But New Mexico is foregoing that until the person has had 4 sessions, and they're free. So they have 4 sessions. I mean, for that person, they don't have to pay for that. I'm not sure where their funding comes from, but in any case, but 37% of those that had those 4 sessions didn't need more. That's quite a few. And also, a relationship is established during those sessions so that if the person does become in need again, they could feel comfortable coming back. Clatsop Behavioral Health is still moving ahead with purchasing the building of the respite center. Capacity is 15 beds, and presently there are 14 to 15 people there. If this segment of the population increases with the lack of housing, that'll become a problem, an increased problem. We all know that lack of housing is a problem for all sectors. Let's see. I think we already know that the Coast Guard does a good job of screening illness, and now that the COVID-19 virus is out there, it's good to know that the Coast Guard has been doing this, has this protocol for a long time. We also learned more about gambling, or gambling disorder, they call it now. They don't call it gambling addiction, they call it gambling disorder. It's on the rise in especially social media, which was interesting. So these games will start out as free, and then people become, they like to play them.
Is that like Candy Crush?
Yes.
Huh.
Yes.
The pusher man, huh?
And then pretty soon, you have to pay. You don't really get anything in return, but they become addictive, yes.
Or disorderly?
Yeah, yes. Let's see. Yeah, I guess there are people who have paid like tens of thousands of dollars into these things, into these games. I had no idea. Also, it's a time factor, because when they're playing these games, they're away from family, they're away from friends, so they're more isolated from community. And children are being groomed, big time. And that's a concern, because their brains are still developing. Okay. There are problems with problem gambling everywhere. I mean, I have some things on my phone. If I'm sitting in a doctor's office or something, I think, oh, I'll just play this game. I only do the free ones.
For now.
Yeah, for now. Well, anyway, we should all be aware that that is a problem, and we should look at children who are on their phone all the time, if we can, to see what they're doing and guide them in a better way. And it's nationwide, because gambling is legal in all but one state, I believe, which is pretty amazing. So this is a nationwide growing problem. But we have more forms, Oregon does, of legalized gambling than any other state.
Really?
Yeah, really. And our schools depend on the revenue, and governments do, and yeah. In Clatsop County, there are 837 people that meet the criteria for this disorder.
Oh, there's more than that.
Well, that's what's been counted. Are you admitting something?
No, I can't imagine there's not more than
I
that.
shouldn't laugh.
I mean, the millions upon millions we get from the lottery ticket,
Yeah.
you can't tell me there's only 800 and some people.
Well, isn't that
problem.
statewide? Do we just get it for our county?
Are you talking 875 for Clatsop County or for the state?
No, this is for Clatsop County.
I thought you said the state.
837.
I said, I don't believe that.
I think that's a lot. And there's 1,739 at risk. We are the 15th highest in Oregon for the lottery. And that's my
You mean for
report.
people who play the lottery?
Yeah. Okay, that's it.
Well, thank you. I always think twice. We do a lot of good things with the money from the lottery, but there's a cost on the other end, too.
As we do
I
for
have
animal
someone in my extended family, I mean, they're very wealthy, so, I guess it's okay, but that's, for this one person, it's their main source of entertainment, and they believe that they always win, because they want a car, and they're high rollers, but it's awful. That's, when I gone to their house, they just sit there on their computer, they're just doing that the whole time. They're just all in. It's sad.
Thank you, Commissioner Nebeker. For myself, I don't have a lot to report. We had the Northwest Senior Disabilities Service Board after the last meeting. I attended the Napa School Board Committee for the health clinic. The thing that impresses me about that, first of all, it's being led by a member of the Bridget Blakesley from the Health Department. She's just doing a terrific job. And I also like the fact that they've included students from the high school. And so it's really neat to be in a meeting with young people, and they contribute to what we're doing, and so I've enjoyed that. And I think that's, other than, we've had a lot of input meetings, Goal 5, all that. Nothing stands out at this time, so I will move it along to County Manager Don Boone, please.
Chair Sullivan, members of the board, your board received a briefing during work session from Mike McNichol about the coronavirus response that the county is involved in with all of our partners, and including hospitals and other community stakeholders. There's another facet to this I just want to share just for total transparency, and that is that we're also planning within the organization just to continue operations in the potential that our staff also get sick. And so being able to maintain services and maintain operations. And so And we're not the only organization that's planning that. Everybody is, but that's another big, expansion or expense of time that we're going to be making. So when you think about things like the election, we have very few staff that execute the election every year. And if folks happen to have gotten sick during that time period, we still need to get the election done. So those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. So I just wanted to share that with you. And the other is tomorrow is the Job and Career Fair. That'll be at the Seaside Convention Center. In the morning, it'll be for high school students, and then in the afternoon, it's for the general public. But Clatsop County will be there. And then we're in the budget process right now, as you're aware, and it's still early in the budget process, and budget process can be intense, and it's all going well. So that's the good news. Monica Steele and I will be talking to your board in April just about some of the things we are seeing in the budget, just as a preliminary overview so that you're not surprised later. So we'll be doing that. And then just wanted to share that the census is also going on, and Monica will be on the radio. So if you are tuned in to KMUN, she'll be talking about the census, and that's coming up soon, 18th. So, and that's all for me today.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along, as soon as I can. We are moving on to the business agenda.
Public hearing.
We're moving right on to the public hearing. First reading of the ordinance 2002 outdoor lighting. This is on your page 86 of your packet. And Mr. Sisson, are you going to give us the information, please?
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Ian Sisson, planner in the Community Development Department. Again, this is the first reading and public hearing for Ordinance 2002. It's the outdoor lighting ordinance. We discussed this at a work session on February 4th, 2020, after a previous work session a little over a year prior to that on January 23rd, 2019, where the topic of dark sky ordinances and outdoor lighting regulations was initially introduced, and that was where we got direction from you to pursue an ordinance. So at the last meeting, I presented a first draft of the ordinance to you and took your feedback, got some feedback from Commissioner Quila by email following that, thank you. And I made a couple of changes to the draft that was presented to you in February. The first changes were to add a couple of definitions. There was a question of what was a water-related use, what was a water-dependent use, and so I pulled those definitions in from our zoning ordinance verbatim. It's to clarify those points. And then also added an exemption to the section containing all the exemptions for low-intensity ornamental lighting. So that would include things like pathway lights that you might put in your front yard, post cap lights that you might have on a back deck, and those string style cafe lights that a lot of people use for illuminating outdoor areas. So one thing that Commissioner Nebeker had mentioned during the work session was support for a curfew on outdoor lighting. So those are things that could be addressed by a curfew. There didn't seem to be broad support for that idea, so it's not included in the ordinance. But just wanted to bring that up again. And if you have any questions about the content, I'm happy to answer them.
Madam Chair, may I?
Certainly.
Forgive my failing memory. Curfew, remind me of that point, because I think I support it, but I just want to be clear with having you reiterate the concern.
So a curfew was something that was brought up as an option of having a time limit, basically, where after a certain hour, the outdoor lights would be required to be extinguished, and then for a duration of time, and then they could come back on.
All right, so I think this is the part I'm not clear on. we would always want to have light contained and focused downward.
Correct.
But the exemptions that you listed, the outdoor paths and the happy lights, those could be on, but then there would be a curfew when they would have to be off? Is that, what lights would be impacted by the curfew? That's what I'm not clear on.
That would be if you wanted to add that. So there's no curfew in this ordinance currently. I just wanted to mention that that was brought up as a piece of feedback in the work session. So
But it didn't make it into the
it
ordinance.
did not make it into this ordinance.
Yet, I'm just trying to hear.
So to answer, well, my intention was that not your porch light necessarily, but the seasonal and decorative lights, that they could perhaps have a curfew. I was thinking maybe, I don't know, 11 o'clock or something like that.
Because I saw in the ordinance that those decorative lights, those holiday lights, can be on for 90 days a year. That's 3 months, that's a quarter of the year. So since we have that space for people to express their creative commitment to enhancing their environment with lights, okay. I would support Commissioner Nebaker in saying if we are going to allow that for that extent, we should have a curfew, because that would work better for me. I don't know how anybody else feels, but I'm in support of what you're
We
suggesting.
could discuss this during the public hearing, isn't that correct? When the public hearing is set?
I should note also that I've presented a couple of options. So the two options are to conduct the first reading of ordinance 2002, open the public hearing and take testimony, and continue the matter to your next meeting, which is March 25th. That would be for the second reading. Or option number 2 would be to conduct the first reading of the ordinance, open the public hearing and take public testimony, and move to table the matter. For example, if you wanted to make any significant changes. So staff has recommended option number 1.
Would you consider that a significant change if the board came to an agreement on that?
If we were to add a curfew, I think that's something we could add before the next meeting.
But then this tonight couldn't constitute the first reading because it's not in the ordinance.
How about if, I'm willing to hold off and revise it later, because I really want to move this thing forward.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, can I interject here? I don't know how you got the impression that that suggestion was not supported, because, I certainly feel strongly that, especially with the extent of houses that are used by temporary tenants in vacation rentals here, that this is a very important issue, even outside of the cities. And I think, do we have, as part of the, I don't know, my question from the beginning with this was, is there a way to measure light intensity that we can use as, hey, that's too bright, or that's heading in the wrong direction, or?
There is. So if you were to look at Cannon Beach's ordinance, for example, the city of Cannon Beach has a lighting ordinance which limits the intensity of light at the property line. So that would involve using, some piece of technology to measure. The unit of measurement would be foot candles. Okay. So foot candles is the unit of measurement that you would observe in a point of space. And then the output of a light is also something that you can measure. So that's in lumens. And so like a pathway light, for example, is usually 5 to 15 lumens at the output level. Car headlight would be more like 1,000 to 1,500 lumens. Mm-hmm. So most of these lights are going to fall somewhere in between.
Okay, I think this is a really important component in this ordinance, and I wouldn't support changing it later, because we could do it now.
Well, then we have to wait to enact it.
Well, 2 more weeks, I mean.
I'm not real clear on on the path of this, but I know that at the work session, we were all invited to submit comments, and Commissioner Quila did. And did you get comments from anyone else?
I only received the one email from Commissioner Quila.
So, so you went ahead with your work, assuming that we were all in agreement?
Correct. I took the notes from the work session that I had taken and the feedback I got from Commissioner Quila. And again, the changes that were made were the ones that I had perceived to be broadly supported. And so some background on how this was set up. We looked at ordinances like the City of Cannon Beaches, which would be on the spectrum of a highly technical ordinance to a very simple ordinance. They would be on the end toward highly technical, where it involves a lot more staff review and expertise to, and also more from the applicant to show a detailed lighting plan and to show, what's the lumen output of all my fixtures and how much light is that going to produce at my property line. That requires some technical expertise that mom and pop coming to the counter don't necessarily have. So that's something that we didn't think was necessary to include in our ordinance. We wanted to keep it more simple. And this is the first comprehensive outdoor lighting ordinance that we would have. So the simplest way to do it is really to say all the light fixtures should be fully shielded, which means that light isn't going to go onto adjacent properties or rights of way, and it's not going to go up in the sky. And I think most people can understand that concept, and it's pretty easy to communicate to the public and educate the public what a fully shielded light fixture is. And then things like the lower intensity ornamental lights, if you go into the store and you're looking at string lights, you're not going to find string lights that are fully shielded. They're just, that's not a product that exists. And so that's one reason why it would fall onto the exemption list.
If I may, I understand your concerns, and I like that you have a very good sense of what the scope of the problem that you want to cover. I understand what staff is doing, and I understand that what we're writing is an ordinance that applies all over Clatsop County in the unincorporated areas. I trust Mr. Sisson's capacity to take good notes, because I've seen that about him. So I probably didn't make myself clear and didn't think I needed to do any follow-up, and should have if I'd had concerns. So I trust you. What makes sense to me is that we have something that is clear and simple, that people can learn how to operate within. We can monitor what's approved relatively inexpensively. We can communicate it effectively to our constituents, and we don't have the additional cost of enforcement, going out with, I assume, some kind of light meters to check things. I mean, I think this is a better way to start, with the least intrusive, least expensive, most easily communicated model, and then we see if there are problems.
I agree completely.
Okay.
My issue is on the time limitation, because to me, that's a pretty easy thing to deal with, to just say that between the hours of midnight and daylight or whatever, there shouldn't be any egregious lights on.
I'm just eager to get it in place, and then we see if there are problems, and if necessary, amend it later.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just say I did respond. There were 4 specific questions that Ian had asked of us, and one of them was, should the ordinance apply in all rural areas? And I believe it shouldn't. I think this is being driven by some beach communities that wanted to have this in place. I think that's perfectly appropriate. If they want to have it in their community, great. I don't think all of rural and unincorporated Clatsop County should be bound by it. So that's why I responded. I didn't think that it should. I don't think that it should address interior lighting. I don't think it should have a specific time frame to bring fixtures into compliance, and I don't think there should be an exemption. I mean, I do think that there should be exemption for ornamental lighting. So I mean, I think I'm maybe in a disagreement with everybody on this one.
Oh, no,
Well, not necessarily, I mean.
But I don't think this should be something that applies across the board in unincorporated Clatsop County.
For myself, I've had the good fortune of spending time in areas with no lighting, and it's really a special thing. And so I am very happy to have an ordinance to begin this. The problem I have with deadline
Thank you, that's.
is who's going to enforce that?
Neighbors.
I would rather neighbors, if they have a problem with somebody's light shining in there, that they first try to talk to them and deal with it on that level. But
Transient occupancy makes that problematic. There's
There's a lot of problems with transient occupancy.
Yeah, but that one in particular.
Right, and I
So-
understand that, but I'm sorry. So I am happy with, my vote, if we're going to vote on this tonight, is that we go ahead with what we have. But-
You don't get to vote tonight, though.
But I mean, I'm happy with it. So if you could repeat the two options again of what the staff was.
So the two options are, number one, to conduct the first reading of the ordinance, open the public hearing, take testimony, and continue the matter to your next meeting on March 25th. Or number two, to conduct the first reading of the ordinance, open the public hearing, and take testimony, and move to table the matter.
I guess what I'm not understanding, Heather, maybe you can help me with this, or Mr. Sisson, you can help me with this, is at what point, both of those options leave you time to make amendments, right?
They would.
But what's the difference
Yeah,
between
I'm
them?
having trouble with that, too.
If you make an amendment that's material, which I think adding a curfew is material.
I think so,
In my
too.
opinion, then you would have 3 readings. This would be the first reading, you direct staff to make changes, come back for another first reading, and then do one more. We've done that, I think, in some of the ordinances that you folks have passed recently. So it just means that you take the public testimony tonight, and then when that's closed, if you want further revisions, then you say to staff, we need these revisions, and come back to us again, and then staff comes back for another first reading and a second reading.
Does the board need to be in agreement on what the changes should be?
Well, staff normally would take its directive from a majority of the board.
So that would imply more board time.
Yeah, I mean, it may not be something that, you're not going to be voting on it tonight. So again, as Mr. Sisson has said, he's trying to draw from consensus of what comments have been made.
So if, let's just say we were speeded up and we didn't make any changes and we passed it, that doesn't mean that in 6 months we can't go, oh my gosh, we should have had a curfew.
No, you could absolutely make that change in a month, you know.
So-
It's just another first reading and second reading.
Okay,
And the change might be, pardon me, but the change might be that Commissioner Aquila has a lot of support in rural Clatsop County that this shouldn't apply there. I mean, the change could be anything.
either way.
Yeah.
Mr. Sisson, how long has the staff been working on this?
Well, the first work session we held with your board on the topic was January 23rd of 2019, so it's been on and off since then, so a little over a year.
I thought so. So I myself support letting this move forward. However, whichever means that is to get that forward, that's what I would like to have happen.
May I say?
Certainly.
I guess I'm concerned that because of our state privacy laws, et cetera, or public issues, I would love to have seen Mark's comments before a first reading. I mean, I think that we needed, I think they're all important comments, and I kind of feel that we don't have.
Well, he did also bring them up at the work session.
He asked all of us to.
Yeah. But I mean, he was vocal about his concerns at the work session.
Well, I guess I didn't remember that, because I think he's made a lot of good points, so, I don't know.
But of the points that he made, if I may, of the points that Commissioner Quayla brought in, the ornamental lights are exempted, correct? In this reading?
Yes. Yes.
And the other concerns, were they addressed in this also?
So the concern regarding the ordinance applying only in specific areas or not having one at all, I do recall Commissioner Quayla bringing up at the work session, and then he restated that in his email to me as well. But I only heard that suggestion from Commissioner Quayla, and so it was not something that I incorporated into the ordinance.
Okay.
We can always come back and amend it. We can, because if we put this in and there's a groundswell of public response, we'll be listening.
Well, this has already been in the paper at least once, hasn't it?
Really?
Wasn't there a story last year or something?
This hearing was advertised. I'm not remembering what else we've done.
But it
to
seemed like a
advertise.
discussion of lighting ordinance has been in the paper. I remember that.
I don't recall.
My brain.
It's an evolutionary, it's an iterative process. We put it in, we see
So-
what happens, people talk to us, we listen, we respond.
And so right now officially this hearing is not open.
No, once the staff report is finished and you're ready to proceed, then you will open the public hearing and take public testimony if there is any, and then you will continue the meeting if you wish to the second reading, or if you wish to table it, that would be a motion at that point.
Okay, thank you. So.
Chair Sullivan? I move that the board conduct the first reading of ordinance 20 dash...
No.
No? We're not doing that?
No, we're not doing that quite yet. I have something else to say. So do you have anything else with the staff report?
I would just add, as far as the discussion on the curfew, it wasn't something that was included. I think originally one of the main concerns in our department was the enforcement aspect. And, one of the biggest questions we had was, does having an outdoor lighting ordinance mean we're going to have to do code enforcement at night? So a curfew definitely seems like something where it could require nighttime code enforcement activities. And also just that I sent out an email there's a planners listserv, statewide planners listserv, and I sent out an email to that group and asked, what are some of the challenges other jurisdictions have had with outdoor lighting ordinances, and is enforcement a nightmare because it was perceived that it could be internally in our department. So what I heard was, most jurisdictions treat it like any other kind of code enforcement, and they'll do nighttime enforcement as needed. But the most successful jurisdictions have said, it's really about community education and having people understand that their lights might be a nuisance to their neighbors. And so it's really about being a good neighbor, understanding what it means to be a good neighbor when it comes to your outdoor lighting fixtures. And so I think something we've also discussed is what can we do in our office, when people are coming up to the counter to provide that information to them. So there's a really great brochure called Good Neighbor Outdoor Lighting, which has great diagrams, illustrations of fully shielded fixtures, and talks about things like glare and light trespass and sky glow. So that's a big, important component that we know about.
I think it's a much better component. I like the education aspect and letting people know,
Yeah.
rather than trying to do enforcement and put an ordinance in place myself.
Well, I don't have a problem with it. I'm always for education, but I think I would like to have an ordinance that's least odorous. No, what is that word?
Onerous.
Onerous, yes, that word. I shouldn't get fancy because then I can't pronounce it. But
With respect to what Commissioner Quayla said, I had a neighbor who was a full-time resident, and I tried to talk with him, I tried to educate, and the response was always, there's no law against it. So some people are good neighbors, whether they're permanent or transient, and some just are not. They're just not.
Well, I think, so my understanding, Heather, and I apologize, is that I now ask, once we've done the questions, I ask for the first reading, we listen to public testimony if there is any, and then we make another decision after that.
I think at this point, you can ask the board if they want to conduct the first reading and have a motion, second, and then call for the public the public hearing, and then continue that matter, if that's what the motion is.
I have a very slim prompt thing here, so I'm struggling, but, so let's
So the
ask-
board needs to make a motion at this point, and the motion is on page 87 of your packet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Nebeker, you were making that.
Yeah. Chair Sullivan, I move that the board conduct the first reading of ordinance 20-02, open the public hearing and take testimony, and continue the matter to March 25th, 2020.
Second. Okay, let's have a vote on that.
Commissioner Nebeker?
Aye.
Commissioner Webb?
Aye.
Commissioner Cleaver?
No.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
And then, do you want to do the first reading, or shall I?
If you don't mind, I wasn't prepared for that part, I apologize.
This ordinance shall be known as an ordinance adopting outdoor lighting regulations and nuisance lighting abatement procedures for unincorporated Clatsop County.
Okay, so I will now open the public hearing. If you wish to testify, please come forward and give your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes. Does anyone here would like to testify? Oh, good. Welcome.
My name is Barbara Rasmussen. I live at 1020 Grand Avenue in Astoria. I'm very pleased that the county is considering the adoption of an exterior lighting ordinance for unincorporated areas in the county. As you may well know, the city of Astoria updated their exterior lighting code in August of 2019. My husband and I, have submitted complaints to the city regarding specific lighting issues on residential, commercial, and city property, one each. Based on that experience and having carefully reviewed the county's proposed ordinance, I wish to commend to you 5 needed improvements to the county's proposed ordinance. Number 1, as recently as has just been discussed, the ordinance should specify in measurements what is considered glare onto adjacent properties and rights-of-way, so that it is not a subjective determination per, quote, guidelines, unquote. Objective standards are needed, and I refer you to the International Dark Sky Association website. One person's glare is another person's illumination. The county will need these objective standards and measurements in order to determine if, quote, the glare is a nuisance, unquote. Number 2, this ordinance should be changed to cover existing lighting in addition to new and replacement lighting. The Astoria City Code does include existing lighting. Number 3, very careful attention should be paid to shielding in all of the nuances of that term. The city is currently installing new lighting fixtures along the Riverwalk that they claim is shielded, but the lighting reaches us 130 feet higher in elevation and 6 blocks away. Number 4, this concerns absentee property owners. We complained about a barn light on the side of a residence, and the response from the city was that they would not pursue this because after all the letters and the time periods that had gone by, when it came to the point of issuing a citation, because the property owner lived in Portland, they would not deliver a citation in person, because the city's experience had been that if it wasn't delivered in person, that the judge would not uphold it. So it was a dead end. So beware of the pitfalls when you might perhaps be dealing with absentee property owners. My last point is that we strongly request that this not be another complaint-driven ordinance. As a private citizen, if a complaint were filed about my lighting, and I looked around at my neighbors' properties and saw that they had the exact same lighting, I would wonder, why not them also? Why are they not being asked to make corrections to their lighting? So we are asking for proactive enforcement of this ordinance, and that it not be complaint-driven and the burden put on individual citizens. It's quite a burden. Commissioners, I really applaud you for your interest in pursuing dark sky guidelines. We realize that it's a step-by-step process, but I wanted to make these points to you to make you aware, as some of you have already discussed, of what the issues might be and what we might have to correct down the road. We are here to tell you that we have been down this road, and these are some of the pitfalls that we have encountered. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rappusen. May we get a copy of your comments? You can just get to Teresa here. Is there anyone else that would like to testify today?
Chris in the audience might as well come up.
Well, I had no idea really that I'd be testifying on this issue, but I support some sort of ordinance to regulate the amount of light coming off of properties. I'm a big believer in dark sky kind of policies for a variety of reasons. Part of it is many people in urban areas have just lost a sense of what's out there in the universe, and I think that's extremely unfortunate. And the more we can do to make the beauty of the night sky available to everyone, I think it enhances our lives. But lights also, and light glare also, have a big impact on wildlife. And I mentioned earlier when I was here talking about the conservation organizations I'm involved in, many animals use light, the natural light, the stars, the moon, and other things to guide them. And by having a lot of interfering light all night long, it can have an impact. On the other hand, I see it's very difficult to come up with a regulation that you can enforce in some reasonable way. I mean, the county already has strains on the budget for all sorts of things, and so I kind of empathize with all of you to have to try to come up with something. I think it's a really difficult task, and I just hope you can come up with something that works. But I think the simplest thing that would really help is to at least have a curfew idea, because that's so simple. The light's either on or it's off, and you don't have to be out there measuring light intensities in the middle of the night. Another idea is broader, and that is to get some idea, some concept within the county of community advisory committees that would take up all sorts of local issues, where each part of the county might have a different take on what to do, but with a local body there trying to help the county reach, some consensus on what sorts of ordinances to have and where they would apply. It would be more from the people, and it's too much to go into in 3 minutes here, and my time's almost up. So please consider the simple idea of a curfew on the light. That would help a lot if it was dark from midnight, say, till sunup. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrar. Anyone else? So, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to work on what the prompts are, because this is not helping me.
All you would say is we'll now continue the hearing until March 25th.
Okay, so we don't, and I have that.
That's all you have to do now.
So the discussion about having it tabled or not tabled, that's not involved here?
No.
Okay. I will continue the hearing to March 25th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the jail, and on the business agenda, the jail relocation project, steel piles, early work amendment to CM/GC contract. This is page 94 on the agenda. David?
Thank you, my dear.
Diffenbach.
Yep,
Mr. Diffenbach, will you give us your report, please?
I will. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here as part of the jail project, obviously. Last year, the board approved a pre-construction contract with Emmerich Construction, and since then, we've been going through design phases, estimating phases, and the general contractor, Emmerich Construction, has bid out some pre-construction work, which is allowed within that pre-construction contract, and so our, the request here is to approve the installation of the pilings, the foundation, which is the grade beams, and the pile caps, to be an amendment to that pre-construction contract, and allow that work to move forward before we have the final prices and the final guaranteed maximum price. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer them.
When I was reading through it, there's Bergenson's Construction is in there. Are they a subcontractor?
All of the general contractor has already been established, and that's Emmerich Construction.
Okay.
So they've already been established, and all these bids that will happen as we go along are subcontractors to them.
Okay, and then there was some in there that said subject to market value. I don't know if that was the price of the steel beams or,
I don't know where that was, and I don't remember that part, but,
I could have been confused.
but what they did was, Emmerich has a big interest in, getting lots of competition, so they have lots of bidders that they reach out to, and they ended up with 5 bidders for this project. And they look at several different items. You can see on page 98 of your packet is their basically bid recording form, and it has all the contractors that bid, and it has, all the different categories that they bid within there, mobilization, furnish the piles, install the piles, so they could compare where the prices were, and from that, pick what we thought was the best subcontractor for this part of the work.
And are you comfortable with their choices here?
Yes.
So I wanted to be really happy about this meeting tonight, because we had a dark skies ordinance that brought tears to my eyes of joy. And this made me very happy as well, because the way I look at this is really good news. We should be ecstatic that this is happening.
This is good news. It's starting the project and getting some real dirt turned out there,
Yeah. Well, ecstatic's a little strong for you, but happy is good enough.
Does anyone else have any other comments?
I have a question.
Certainly.
So is the understanding that this is increasing the contract with Emmerich by this 705?
It is. The
So-
pre-construction contract was, I can't remember, 150,000 or something for all this work that they're doing now and helping us review the design, provide estimates and everything. And so this is an amendment to that pre-construction contract, to add this it's not extra work, to add this beginning work that was already planned for the project.
So this is work that's just a little bit out of sequence.
It's out of sequence, because once we get the main bids in which is in May, then we'll come back to you with the whole entire scope of the project, and that'll be a way bigger number than this.
Okay.
So this is a CMGC, so we're going to build up to that number once we get all of the actual bids in, and we're just taking this one now so that we can get some of that work started. But as we get all the bids, we will build up to what the actual project cost is.
Okay,
So-
now
So
I
we're
get it.
chunking in money and we're chunking in time, and it's all done to get the best product for the least cost. I mean, that was my understanding of all of the process that you designed.
I got
Right.
it.
Okay, so Madam Chair, I move that the board authorize the county manager to sign a contract amendment in the amount of $705,820 with Emmerich Construction Company to provide construction installation of pile caps and grade beams. Second.
Okay, we have a motion to authorize the county manager to sign a contract amendment in the amount of $705,820 with Emmerich Construction Company to provide construction installation of pile caps, and grade beams. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing no need for discussion, I'd like to have the vote called, ordered, whatever.
Commissioner Webb?
Aye.
Commissioner Aquila?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Nebaker?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye. Okay, so,
And there's just
sorry.
some extra information that was just handed out to you to kind of update the board, since we haven't come to you for a few months. And today is the first thing on there where we were requesting approval of this early work amendment. And then skipping down to April 22nd, we'll come back to you for another early work amendment, which will be some civil site work, utilities, some grading, and the building demolition that we've talked about before. And then May 7th, after that, is the actual big bid day when all these subcontractors will be submitting bids to Emmerich Construction. And then a couple of weeks after that, towards the end of May, the May 27th meeting, we will be coming to the board, and that'll be probably a longer discussion for the guaranteed maximum price. You know, that will be the millions of dollars one compared to the hundreds of thousands of dollars one.
Okay, I'm sorry, I need to go back to, just a moment here.
Sure.
Need to go back to the vote because we didn't finish that. So the vote was 5-0 in support of, that we authorize the county manager to sign a contract amendment at the amount of $705,820 with Emmerich Construction Company to provide construction installation of pile caps, and grade beams. And so that has been approved today, and so the work, as a result of that, the work will continue, will
Right.
begin on this.
I apologize for getting you out of pace.
Oh, no, and so then you gave us an amendment of upcoming.
Just informational, timelines here.
What's coming for?
So, all right, well, very good. Thank you very much.
Can I, before we let David go, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is, you know, of course, that I read in detail the contract with Emmerich. So I just can't remember certain parts of it.
Okay.
Did we have some stipulation in this contract about a preference for local subcontractors?
You can't really
Can we
preference
use-
local contractors because there's a whole bunch of problems you get into that, because then let's say Portland decides to preference their local contractors, and then our contractors can't bid on theirs. So, but the contractor, Emmerich, did do a local contractor outreach. They had a pre-bid meeting out at the job site, invited all the local contractors. They did an event that was in conjunction with the governor's marketplace up at the college, and they had their guys there all day long and reached out to the contractors. They are really trying to generate and break up the bid packages to allow more local, so they're doing a lot.
But there are legal issues with
But
that.
it's still up to the contractors to provide bids that will be competitive.
Sure. Just one other question. We hear so much from our local construction companies that they are desperate for workers. Are you seeing that that's an issue in any of this?
I don't know if we see that directly, but we know that because the competition for the bids isn't sometimes as low as we would hope, because it's hard to get somebody to bid when they already have a year's worth of work, you know?
Right, yeah, right, that's right. Okay, I was just asking that general market question. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, anything for the good of the order?
Yeah, I just have one thing.
No, that's the last thing on the agenda, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, nerds love charts.
Well, we haven't had the executive directors, I mean, the.
The county manager. You want to talk more? You want to talk more? Okay,
He's
good.
he's given his.
He's given his once. If he,
Right.
if he
This
has,
is- This is under good of the order.
I thought you saw something else that I didn't see over my shoulder. I got a chart from the county manager. I'm just a happy camper, because in my world, what gets measured gets done. And besides that, then I don't have to remember everything. So kudos to the county manager. I got a chart, I got a progress on a big project, and I got a dark skies ordinance all in the same meeting. It's just heavenly. Thank you.
Is there a public health, what I was referencing
Did
was the
you-
public health update?
We did that during the work session.
Oh, and you,
That was intended to be a work session item for Dr. Mike to come in, so.
But if, basically,
So I can give a quick summary, though, if you'd like. So as of today, Clatsop County does not have any diagnosed COVID-19 cases in the county. But as we all know, there are a growing number of cases in the state. There are 19 confirmed cases in the state, and then there's roughly 250 others that are being monitored right now. The state is working on making tests more readily available, because testing is an important part of actually controlling the virus. And so there are private labs now that are available to do some of that testing also, which will augment the testing that's coming through OHP and through the CDC. We have multiple meetings every week with the medical providers, with cooperators, and with the state. And we're coordinating very closely, as I think everybody knows. And this is a iterative challenge for all of us, and we'll continue to approach it with a lot of vigor. There's a lot of staff time that's being allocated to this. So there's just some basic things that people can do to help. One is stay home if you're sick. The other is make sure you have good hygiene, wash your hands frequently. If you are concerned, try to social distance yourself so as not to expose yourself. Avoid large gatherings if you can. And if you need help, I would ask. So whether it's let us know or let your family know, let your friends know. So we're going to go through this together as a community. And so we're going to learn as we go, and we're going to do the best that we can for the community. So.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Okay, anyone else? This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.